Hello there, my name is Taminjai, and this is News Review. Coming up on the show today, Ecowas has pledged to stand by the people of the Gambia in ensuring a new constitution is realized. The Ecowas Commission President Jean-Claude Cassi Bro met President Adama Barrow today, and he later spoke to reporters. We have a report on that for you. The Kanilai ferry also sent passengers into panic mode after it halted a few minutes into its journey to Banjul. Monday evening, the ferry apparently developed technical issues. This is what officials at the ports are telling us. I spoke exclusively to the managing director of Gambia Ports Authority, Mr. Usman Jobate, earlier today. Mayor Rohi Malik Low also on Tuesday addressed the Africa Region Summit on making cities across Africa resilient to disasters by 2030. We have a report for you on that too as well. But before all of that, we'll quickly see what the newspapers are saying. Today, beginning with the Standard, their lead story is saying Bangladesh gives $500,000 US to Gambia for Rohingya case. Supreme Court asks IEC to file processes in Bibi Dabo's case. Inter-party says IEC should not take legal advice from AG. Yakumba defends $54 million assembly loan scheme. It is a sin to be in opposition. That's according to the president's top advisor there, Siaka Jatta. Let's see what they're... So according to President Adama Barrow's political advisor, Siaka Jatta has told the people of Kiam that it is a sin to be in opposition. Mr. Jatta, who was speaking at the launching of the Indian government-funded $22.5 million US dollars electricity project expansion project in Queenala on Saturday, said he regretted ever being in the opposition. Also, Bangladesh gives $500,000 US to Gambia for Rohingya case. Bangladesh has donated funds worth $500,000 US on Saturday to support Gambia at the International Court of Justice. That's the ICJ there to secure rights for the persecuted Rohingya Muslims. Supreme Court asked IEC to file processes in Bibi Dabo's case. The Supreme Court of the Gambia has directed the Independent Electoral Commission to file the necessary processes in the suit filed by Bakari Bunja Dabo, the Secretary General of Gambia for All Party, against it and the Attorney General on election matters relating to Section 17 of the Election Amendment Act 2015, among others. Bibi Dabo, the founding father of Gambia for All, political party that was registered in January 2020, was living outside the Gambia from 1994 to 2017. In this suit, Bibi Dabo contends that it is onerous condition to require all political parties applying for registration after the commencement of the Election Amendment Act 2015 to pay a registration fee of $1 million and to submit a declaration signed by at least 10,000 registered voters with at least 1,000 members from each administrative area pledging their support to the party and requesting for its registration. So Bibi in essence is saying that that is hard, or in fact it's complicated there. So that is why he has dragged the IEC. Inter-party says IEC should not take legal advice from AG. The 16 political parties that attended the Inter-Party Committee meeting last week to debate on the elections bill have unanimously recommended that the Independent Electoral Commission should not seek legal advice from the Attorney General's office on matters that deal with elections. Yakumba defends $54 million assembly loan scheme. Nominated National Assembly member Yakumba Jete has said she has no regrets in tabling the controversial $54 million proposal that NAMS and the entire assembly staff could access to build houses and buy cars. Let's see what the point is saying. Sanyang women, rice farmers, demand gach compensation. Over 1,000 health center schools to get renewable energy. That's according to the president. IEC urged to set up a legal team. Kiang electrification brings light, smiles to faces of people. So according to the point today, a number of women rice farmers at Sanyang Kanyanko have accused Gach, a private-owned sand mining company, of destroying their rice farms following saltwater intrusion and also demolition of fences due to mining operations. Also, over 1,000 health centers, schools to get renewable energy. That's a quote there by the president. President Barrow has stated that in the interest of all citizens, ample resources have been mobilized for the energy sector to light health facilities and schools. The funds will be duly invested to intensify and ensure the electrification of the whole country by 20 2025. My government has also secured funding to provide renewable energy in 1,100 health centers and schools across the country. The president was speaking over the weekend in Kiang, Kuinala during the inauguration of the Kiang electricity expansion project. That is it for the newspapers. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Thank you very much. So Ecowas has promised to stand by the people of the Gambia in ensuring that a new constitution is realized. The Ecowas Commission President, that is Jean-Claude Cassi-Bro, is in town, and on Tuesday, that's today, he met President Adama Barrow, and he later spoke to reporters. More in this report. He has been in the country for the past 3 days, and on Tuesday, he came face-to-face with President Adama Barrow, a meeting that forms part of his official trip to the Gambia. He spoke to reporters shortly after he came out of his closed-door meeting with the president.
The objective of this mission is really to continue the process of consultation with the Gambia. We regularly have consultation on the various issues of common interest. So we took this opportunity to see a bit how the situation, for example, of the COVID-19, sanitary situation, and the impact on the economy. And we were very pleased to notice that with all the action taken by the government and the authorities, the sanitary situation of the COVID-19 has really improved. And we really commended the authorities for that, for the work that has been done. You know, we are following this situation at the regional level. The impact on the economy also, we have discussed that, and the government has been taking action to revive some of the sectors that have been impacted, as many countries have been impacted by the COVID-19, various economic and social sectors in many countries of ECOWAS. So we are very pleased for all the measures that the government has been taking and is taking. And we are confident that all those actions will allow the country, the economy, to really continue on its growth path, and which is really good for the Gambian and the Gambia, and also for ECOWAS region.
Since ECOWAS forces were unleashed in the Gambia 3 years ago, huge sums of money have been spent in maintaining them. The ECOWAS Commission President says they get their money through contributions from member states and partners.
The resources that are being used to support the ECOMIG here in the Gambia, the same way we supported ECOMIB in Guinea-Bissau, because, we closed our mission in Guinea-Bissau last September, just 2 months ago, is coming from the contribution of member states of ECOWAS. It has to be very clear. Of course, we also have support from some of our partners outside with whom we work. We have partners that support us in many activities, not only in security and peace and political support, in economic, social, humanitarian, infrastructure. So some of our partners, such as, for example, the European Union, support us also for our forces that we have on the ground. So those are the main sources of resources to finance those operations.
He also addressed the issue of the stay of economic forces in the Gambia.
The decision of the ECOMIG to leave the country, is something that, of course, is discussed with the country. We discussed with the country. It's done, as I told you, it's done in consultation, and we have several structures for those decisions. We have the committee of the 15 chief of staff, army staff of the member countries, that meet and discuss those things, because we're talking about military mission. And then we also have the Council of Peace and Security, the ministerial meeting. We have the Minister of Defense, Minister of Foreign Affairs, that meets all the 15 countries. And then they also, after that, make a recommendation to the head of state, to the summit, which take the final decision. So it's a process. But again, what is important is that those processes, as I explained to you, are done really in consultation, because the key is always to maintain, really, as I said, peace and stability. This is we need to make sure that this is maintained. So I think those consultations allow us at the regional level, at the level of Ecowas, to make the best decision that is good for the country and the region.
The Barrow administration has been advancing various reform programs, but the voting down of the draft constitution by the National Assembly is seen in some quarters as a major blow to its reform program. Ecowas is of the view a new constitution is an important priority that needs achieving.
We also discussed the many important reforms that are ongoing, particularly the reform on the Constitution. It's a very important reform project. We were informed about the recent evolution in the National Assembly, but also steps that have been taken by the authorities to really make sure that this process is ongoing. ECOWAS, of course, is very keen in supporting, working and accompanying, supporting the authorities, because a new constitution that is really broad-based, that is supported by the majority of the Gambian, will be really a very important basis to support future social, political, economic, and human development. So we can only stand behind the Gambian, stand behind the government, the authorities, to continue to work together, to reach out to the maximum, to the largest possible. We understand the steps that have been taken to really make sure that this process continues. And ECOWAS will support the country and support the authorities.
Kasi Bro on Tuesday first had a general meeting with President Barrow and his top advisors. The president's advisors later left the room to allow just the two of them to discuss certain issues in private. Lamin Jai, News Review.
For the first time in the Gambia, your favorite GSM operator, Africell, is the first and only GSM operator to launch a brand new technology called the eSIM. The eSIM simply means you can use your phone without a SIM card. Do you have an iPhone 11, any of the iPhone X series, a Google Pixel 3, or any new phone that supports the e-technology? Then walk into any Africell customer care center and activate your eSIM today. With your virtual Africell SIM, you can use more than one number without having a physical SIM card in your phone. Enjoy this brand new technology for the first time in the Gambia, brought to you by Africell. eSIM, your phone without a SIM card. For more information, please call 111. Where Africell goes, nobody dares to follow.
Welcome back. Mayor Rohilo on Tuesday addressed the Africa Region Summit on making cities across Africa resilient to disasters by 2030. Fatou Kamara was at that meeting and she tells us more.
The Lord Mayor of Banjul, Rohimali Klo, on Tuesday participated in the virtual launching of the Making Cities Resilient 2030 program, organized by the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction Regional Office for Africa.
I am honored to give this keynote statement in an effort to strengthen the call for African regional launch of the Making Cities Resilient 2030, MCR 2030. This event came at a time stakeholders are joining hands in building city resilience by 2030, in line with the SEDI framework for disaster risk reduction 2015-2030. Disasters are on the increase globally, affecting more lives and livelihoods of our people, with increasing vulnerabilities in our communities, while cities are usually at high risk of disasters.
According to the Lord Mayor, disasters are on the increase globally, leaving urban areas as the most vulnerable.
Urban areas are the most vulnerable communities, and as already projected by the United Nations in 2050, 2/3 of the world's population will be living in urban settlements. This is a clear manifestation that we have to establish strong policy frameworks and leadership to make our cities habitat resilient to climate shocks, and the city of Banjul is no exception.
The city of Banjul's mayor also spoke on the current COVID crisis and strategies her office have employed in partnership with stakeholders.
The Gambia is one of the smallest countries in Africa, with the economy highly dependent on tourism and rain-fed agriculture, which is highly climate sensitive. Gambia is highly vulnerable to sea level rise caused by climate change, and about 2/3 of the capital city lies half a meter below sea level, making the city the most vulnerable community in the country in terms of climate change and disaster. The predictions are also very clear as to what will happen with regards to food security and community livelihood in years to come. Colleagues, this year's rain coupled with COVID-19 have caused numerous disasters, including death and serious injuries in the city and other parts of the country. The Banjul City Council, through consultation with stakeholders such as the Disaster Management Agency, the central government, and other civil society organizations, have designed a strategy for her people to curb the pandemic and the effect of climate hazards. The strategy, despite challenges, has indeed worked for the people of Banjul. In addition, my team and I have been able to initiate the Banjul Relief Initiative, where food packages such as sugar, oil, and rice were delivered to over 2,500 families. Likewise, the 100,000 Max Initiative I launched fumigation of major public places such as mosques, markets, schools, the ferry terminal, and compounds, among others. To avoid infrastructure disasters, Banjul City Council is actively working with the Disaster Management Agency on risk reduction programs such as the demolition of dilapidated buildings in the city. The process is also supported by the Department of Physical Planning and Housing as the government arm responsible in assessing buildings to avoid future disasters. Chairperson, honorable colleagues, in line with the SEDI framework for DRR, Banjul City Council, with the support from the United Nations Office for Migration, together with the National Disaster Management Agency, developed the second city contingency plan. This plan was developed consultatively with all the key stakeholders within the capital city to help in the response for a resilient city. However, since the adoption of the SEDI framework for disaster risk reduction in 2015, the Gambia has committed herself to invest in risk reduction through the improvement of government sectorial policies, enforcement and monitoring mechanism to ensure that our national political and policy environment are supportive to the SEDI agenda. As a result, under the new development program, the National Development Plan 2018-2021, the government and stakeholders, through a series of consultations with citizens, including vulnerable groups, have agreed that disaster management must be one of our top agendas at all levels. For the first time in our development planning, The National Disaster Management Agency is directly tasked to report to the highest political authorities about its work, especially on community risk reductions and resilience building programs.
The mayor during the meeting asked her colleague mayors and governors in Africa to ensure good resilience policies are put in place.
Chairperson, honorable colleagues, as the president of the African Capital Cities Sustainability Forum, I want to join the rest of my colleagues to promote the agenda of strengthening resilience in capital cities, which is fundamental and can spearhead the journey countrywide to ensure we are building forward better. I also urge colleagues to increase the awareness campaign as part of strategies in order to make our people understand the risks around us to enhance our capacities in disaster reductions. Colleagues, regardless of our political differences, we should work with our central governments for a sustainable city and to develop our local DRR strategies that are aligned with the MCR 2030 agenda. Honorable Chairperson, I am concluding in making a call for action to my entire colleague mayors and governors in Africa to ensure our cities have resilience policies such as city DRR strategies and to invest more in socio-economic development as it is key pillar for progress of our cities. Let us continue to build synergies in not only curbing the spread of this pandemic, but also to make sure that the sustainability of our cities stays a priority.
The summit was held as part of activities towards achieving the Making Cities Resilience to Disaster by 2030. The initiative began in 2015. Fatou Kamara reporting for the Fatou Network News Review.
Do you want an affordable yet exquisite home or a service plot from TAF but do not know how to go about it? Worry no more. Let me walk you through the process. 1. Book a viewing with us. 2. Agree on a payment plan you are comfortable with. 3. Fill out a reservation form. 4. Take your time to review, ask questions, and when satisfied, you can proceed by signing our sale agreement. And 5. Pay a deposit and sale is confirmed. From there, you can walk into your home and enjoy the real TAF experience, or still be a proud owner of a service plot from us. It's that simple. Book a viewing today. For more information, please call 376-2333 or 776-2333.
Thank you. My guest is the Managing Director of Gambia Ports Authority, Mr. Usman Jobate. So yesterday, the Kanilai ferry ran into trouble midway in its journey from Bara to Banjo. This sparked a huge panic among passengers on board the ferry. He's here and he will clarify to us what really went wrong. Mr. Jobate, thank you for speaking to the Fatou Network.
Thank you, Lami.
Tell us, what really happened yesterday regarding the Kanilai ferry?
Yes, it happened at around 9:40 p.m. Kanilai loaded from Bara, bound for Banjul, and during the voyage, she developed technical problem. One of the engines that controls the steering and the propulsion system. So there was shutdown in that system. The ferry could not stay on her own any longer, and because of the wind and the currents, the ferry got drifted away from the land eastwards towards the around the SL Health Center, and she ran aground on there. And she stayed there until, as we were speaking, we were trying rescue efforts to tow her out of the mud where she's stuck. But immediately we got the information, we had to mobilize and get the other ferry, Johe, to rush to the scene and try to tow her out. When that did not materialize, we decided to disembark the passengers from Johe, load them onto, from Kanilai, sorry, load them onto Johe, and then ferry them to Banjul, at least to save the lives. And it happened that that was successful, and the passengers got to Banjul only around 1:46 a.m. in the morning. But during all that time, we were around and we did mobilize the resources that were available in terms of the tugboat Jufure, which is a GP aircraft, and just to be allowing the passengers to be more calm and at ease that once the ferry has run aground, I mean, any imminent danger of drifting would not occur, because that's the point where it can get stuck. And thankfully, in shipping, there's this saying that when in distress, head to the beach to save lives. So we're thankful that it happened, that it drifted along that line.
But then tell us about, I mean, you said your immediate effort was to dispatch Johe to go and find a way of towing it. When that didn't materialize, you tried to disembark the passengers. But clearly there was panic, and the information we got was immediately the ferry developed technical problems. There wasn't any, sort of planned effort on the part of the Gambia Ports Authority in ensuring that people, the passengers, are safe.
Well, we've been communicating with the quartermaster on board and the engineering team to mobilize the rescue plan as far as trying to resuscitate the engine or put it back to life was concerned. And during that time, most of them were maybe busy trying to see how they can put the engine back on. And that could have been a lapse in communication, which I have to admit. But later on, when 40 minutes after the incident, when it got to a point where the only possible alternative was to deploy Johe, we had managed to communicate to the few people on board, because we were in constant contact with some of them. I think there were even some journalists who were on board the ferry. And I myself did talk to one or two passengers and also the quartermaster to allay the fears of the traveling public and the passengers that were on board the ferry, that safety and their comfort was at risk, but there was no need for unnecessary panic, because as far as the ferry was concerned, once you ran aground, life would no longer be at danger compared to when it would have been out in the open sea. So that did happen, we have to admit.
How many people were on board the ferry?
I didn't take a proper count at this, but from what was visibly evident when they were disembarking from the ferry around 1:46 a.m., close to 150 passengers would reasonably be expected to have been on board. What we can confirm from the tallies of the loading.
But if 150 people were on board the ferry, so how did you go about allaying their fears, assuaging their fears, to tell them that everything was going to be all right? I mean, do you have a PA system in the ferry?
Well, there's a PA system in the ferry, but at that particular point, because there was shutdown, there was no communication between the bridge and the engine. So all these systems on the ferry could not work at that time. So
including the PA system?
Well, yes, because they are all electrical modules that are based on the generation of the power. So if there was no power, then there was no means of communication. Only the hazard lights and the emergency lights were on. But the crew were trying to walk around the ferry and talk to a lot of passengers. As I said, all efforts were done that were reasonably within our disposal to talk to the people on board and assuage their fears. And a former staff of ours, who was also a technical director in the ferries, happened to be on board, and he witnessed all what transpired firsthand. And we were in constant touch with that person to at least lend a helping hand in assuaging any fears of any likelihood of threat to life at that particular point.
But do you realize that that was a failure, not having a PA system in a crowded boat where you have over 100 people? Because if people get panicked, there is every tendency that their safety becomes an issue. And if you cannot go about making sure that you assuage their fears by way of PA system, because from going from one individual to the other, because clearly there was confusion everywhere. We got, audios of the mood at the ferry at the time. It was really very, very confusing and scary, to the extent that some of the passengers were so frustrated, they were, taking out their anger on your officials in the ferry, that they were not telling them anything. You come to them, they tell them that, okay, you know what, the ferry has a problem, that's all that we can tell you.
Yes, certainly, we have received such reports. And as I said, we cannot but sympathize with their plight, because the safety of lives is paramount. And their comfort was also at risk, which we have to admit. We'll learn from it going forward and make sure that there are alternative systems of communication in the unlikely event that such things were to happen in future. But really what happened was that once there's a power outage, the PS system could not have been used at that particular moment. So the crew were also busy trying to see what they can do to put the engine back on. That's maybe where the breakdown in communication happened. But I have to admit, there was communication left much to be desired.
And also, do you realize that small canoes, boats, were also at the ferry where people are jumping into, which could be very dangerous? Are you aware of that?
Well, what we are aware of is that the fire and rescue service, which is nearby, because the engine, according to reports from the engineers on board the ferry, developed some overheating problems. And they managed to talk to the guys on the shore, that's the fire and rescue service. So they used some of these small boats, the dinghies, to fetch water and take it on board, to pour more water on the engine to try to maybe address the overheating. So those were the boats that were plying, but not that any canoes were trying to save people from the ferry and take them ashore.
And also, one thing also that has to do with the ferries and how they are maintained over the period. Your engineers, your technicians should be able to know when, I know these are machines, but they should have an idea, a clue as to how and when a machine would develop a fault, because this is about people's life here. And you just travel halfway into the sea, no man's land, and a ferry gets, broken down.
Yes, what I can say with certainty is that as a responsible organization, we're aware that the safety is paramount in this type of operations, the service that we provide. And efforts would not be spared in making sure that the ferries are technically suitable to ensure safety of passengers during the sea voyage. Engines, they need regular maintenance, they need preventative maintenance, but there's also breakdown maintenance. And these particular engines on the ferry Kanilai were procured in 2013, if memory serves me right. And each of them, according to information from the engineers, has clocked 12,000 running hours. So with that, the standard in the industry is that they need some overhaul. So these are the overhauls that we've been doing intermittently. But the more sustainable option is to go for brand new engines and try to address the problem going forward.
Have you done that with the Kanilai ferry?
Yes, the engines have been procured because there are two systems on the ferry. There's the engines that generate the power, and then there's the shuttle systems, the propulsion system that gives the traction and pull on the ferry. Now, because of this dual nature of the system, the engines would give power, and then the shuttle systems will be used for traction. What I know with certainty is that the shuttles, pump jets we call them, have been developing some problem because they get entangled with a lot of debris and ropes and fishing nets that they pick up along there, because these are, they soak in water and then to provide the traction for the engines to flow. Now, those have been placed on order, but they are not spares that are off the shelf. They are built to order. So once you confirm an order, and it takes minimum 6 months to get them delivered, I know with certainty that those pump jets have been placed on order. But with regards to the engine, usually what we do intermittently is to do overhaul. But like I said earlier, the situation now as it is evolving, the repairs or the overhaul might not give it the desired output compared to a new one. So I'm just saying that with certainty that the next step would be to place an order for brand new engines.
But do you think that is responsible at all, to allow people to enter ferries that clearly are not fit to ply the ocean, the sea?
Well, the safety, as I said earlier, is primary in our concerns. Now, not that the ferry is not ship-shape at all, but if the engines are failing well, it has some risk in terms of navigability. But by and large,
is it worth it at all?
It's, well, see what
allow people to enter such ferries?
Well, this is how the ferries are being operated. As I said earlier, if the engines reach a particular running hours, they need some overhaul, and the overhauls is what they have been doing. But now this is a major breakdown, and it has to be addressed by maybe replacement of a new one. But traditionally, and according to industry standard, certain running hours, you have to do some overhaul with the engines, and that is being done regularly. But this is a major breakdown that we need another approach in terms of replacing it.
In fact, I understand the parts for at least one of your ferries, Kunta Kinte, is already in town. Is this true?
Well, Kunta Kinte, we ordered also a new pump jet because it has 4. One of them had failed due to some breakdown. As I mentioned earlier, entanglement with debris and a lot of ropes and nets along the ferry lane. The order is expected to be delivered 6 months after confirmation. But there are other problems on the ferry in terms of the engine. So those parts have been delivered. And we have a maintenance arrangement with the suppliers of the ferries, because these ferries were given to the GPA on a supply credit arrangement with the shipbuilders, that is Diamond Shipyard in Holland. And it's an 8.9 million euro facility, which we are paying biannually for the next 5 years. Now, in the contract, we have a maintenance arrangement with them. They have a resident engineer from Diamond Shipyard that sees to the proper upkeep of the ferry on a daily basis. These are engineers that are resident on the ground. So during the time that the landing bridge, new landing bridges were installed, 3 of them were around, 2 mechanics and an electrician. So they saw to the overhaul of the systems that were on Kunta Kinte. Everything is fixed, but on the panel, which is the electronic software that gives the communication between the bridge operator, that's the ferry captain, and the engine room, is what is failing. All the electricals, the alarms that went off and the fuses have all been changed and the wirings are done. But now there's no communication between the bridge control and the engine. And this is as a result of a software issue. Because the ferry has 2 systems, as I said earlier. The mechanical system is supplied by Diamond, which is the engineering. And then the shuttle propulsion system, which is another outfit in Germany. They manufacture this propulsion system. Now, because of the COVID, some of the technicians from shuttle could not travel, but we managed to get one of the authorized technicians who's flying out from Mali to the Gambia. We actually bought the ticket for him and confirmed his travel, only to learn that at the time of departure from Mali, he was not allowed to board the flight because of the COVID test. So as we are speaking this morning, he had done the COVID test and we had changed his flight to arrive here on Thursday. So when he arrives Thursday, we'll pick him up from Dakar Airport, bring him over for him to come with the software package. Because these are manufacturers' own patent. They own the software, and from our commercial relationship with them, maybe it's a company policy, they don't give their software out to clients. So what this guy is going to do is to come and reprogram the system such that the bridge controls will be communicating with the engine. But the ferry is been overhauled and it's good to go. It's just that if one is aware, on the panel, there are 3 switches there. One is saying power, the other one is saying preset, and the other one is saying run. So 2 of them, I have seen it for myself. They're all green, meaning that they're good to go. But the one that is saying run is the one that is not giving any signal. So it means that there is no communication between the bridge and the engine room. So this is what the guy is coming to fix, because it's a manufacturer's patent. It's coming to reprogram the whole system so that there will be communication. And we are hopeful that it's not something major, but just that it's not within our control. So that's the issue about Kunta Kinte. But we are hopeful that over the weekend, once it is resolved, it will be back in service.
MD, your institution, every now and then, Gambians would say ports is one of the most useless public institutions in this country. And if this were some other country, your institution could even get sued for what happened yesterday. You did admit here clearly that your ferries have problems, yet you allow them to, you manage, if you like. And then what do you have to say about the fact that people think that your institution is one of the most useless institutions in the country?
Well, we are alive to the criticisms, but for us it's more of a motivation to provide safer and more reliable service. Because to tell you the truth, it's one of our main company policy to make sure, because this is transport, safety cannot be compromised. I'm saying that the engines had developed problems because they have reached a stage in their running life that it needs overhaul, and that is normally what is done, to overhaul the engines. But if you overhaul an engine, it will not give the maximum power as a brand new one. So we're saying now we have reached at a point where, because of the recurrent issues with the engines of the ferries, the conscious decision will be taken to replace them with brand new ones. And in the interim, try to stabilize the technically more reliable ones, the likes of Kunta Kinte, to providing a limited service, just not to disrupt the movement of people. It's a social service, and we are aware of the criticism, but it is our intention to ensure that safety is enhanced to the maximum.
How about calls for the management, the top brass of the GPA to be sacked? You have received complaints that you should be sacked, together with your deputy, together with all the directors that you work with, that this is a monumental failure that should warrant your sacking, that if this were in some other country where you have a more decisive leader, you wouldn't have spent today in this office?
Well, certainly we can only make known our challenges and the constraints we are facing as an organization, but the appointing authorities are also been adequately briefed, because we have a risk assessment policy which would identify all the challenges we face as an institution, because trade is booming, but the facility is not growing commensurably, and some of the spare parts and the equipment we need are not within our direct control. And if you have to place order, for example, as I said earlier, for a part like a shuttle unit, it can only be done because they are not off the shelf. It can only be done once you confirm an order. And by and large, it's a question of resources also, because most of these spares, an engine unit, for example, is $60,000, and to get the 4 engines. And what happens in ferries really is that the company is not a profitable venture. In a typical situation where all the 3 ferries are up and running, the revenue that is expected to be generated on a daily basis, about $300,000, will add up to about $9 million in a month. And if you take fuel, for example, alone for the ferries at 10,000 liters per week for the 3, minimum $4 million would be spent on fuel. And the staff salaries is also about $8 million monthly. So if you spend $12 million a month on fuel alone and staff salaries, and then receive at best $9 million, it means you're a $3 million deficit monthly, not to talk about the order of the spare parts and the maintenance of the infrastructure and other facilities for the staff. So this is the scenario in which there's a dearth of resources that is required, and also the fact that Trans-Gambia, which used to be the cash cow, as it were, of the ferries, is no more because of the prevalence of the Senegambia Bridge. Now the ferries have been redeployed to other stations, and those staff are now moved over, and they've been taken care of from the head office expenses in Banjul. And also the fact that all the other 7 or 8 other crossing points along the river are cross-subsidized from the revenue that is generated from Banjul and Bara. The tariff is also controlled by government to ensure that undue hardship is not levied on the passengers that are utilizing our services. So these are constraints generally that the ferries is operating under. But again, to your question, we are alive to our responsibilities, and we try to do our utmost to be of service to our public. And they are all our esteemed customers. We are Gambians. We are doing all what is reasonably possible to provide a safer and more reliable service, as I keep telling.
This that you call your constraints, is the government or the president, if you like, or your line ministry, are they aware of this? These constraints that you are pushing, that is stopping you from being efficient, if you like, 100%.
No, I'm saying that's just one side of the argument. The other side of it is that you plan things and you make budgets annually and make provisions to replace resources that need to be strengthened. So we're saying that because of the nature of the transport industry we operate, which is marine, there's a huge demand for resources. That's just the point that I was trying to make. And the ferries are not, they are built to design. And the Kunta Kinte we have, because of the financial situation of the ferries, we had to enter into a commercial agreement with the supplier of the ferry, which is Diamond Shipyard. So it's on a supplier credit facility, and it's an 8.9 million euro facility, which we pay biannually. Almost 800,000 euros is paid every 6 months towards servicing the debt over the 5-year period. But the expectation is that going forward, we will engage government and the necessary institution and our partners to ensure there's improvement in both the craft and the landing facilities, as it were, in the ferries, because we have to live with ferries because of the country is divided into 2 by a river, which necessitates crossing for social reasons. I keep telling you, because the ferry tariff is not a cost plus. The tariff is merely for the cost of operation, which is not even sufficient.
And how about what would you say to claims that this incident was an act of sabotage on the part of the GPA?
Well, we are doing our investigations, and it's too early to preclude any notion, because maybe what is in people's motivation cannot be read off. What we can state with a certainty is what we find on the ground. Because we are attending to an emergency, we will allow the guys to rescue the ferry, as it were. When we come back, we will sit down and do our necessary investigation and get to the bottom of the issue. But by and large, you don't want to rule out anything at this stage, but these are anecdotes that you need to just verify. So what we are saying is that we will get to the bottom of it, and as a responsible organization, we will know exactly what transpired. But basically, safety will not be compromised for any reason. So to say it's an act of sabotage or not, we don't have that information yet, but maybe if there's anything, the investigations might lead to where faults were, and where to apportion blame, and how to strengthen going forward.
This investigation, has it started?
Yes, indeed, it has started, because the first line actors, which were people on the craft themselves, they have to provide some written explanation as to the circumstances that led to the ferry running adrift and running aground at the site at which it happened at Barra End.
So this investigation is an internal investigation, or you are hiring independent investigators? Because if it is an internal investigation, there is every likelihood, there is tendency of a cover-up. Should there be something that the GPA, for example, wouldn't want to come out?
Be rest assured, it concerns people's lives and its safety. And we will do all the appropriate steps to make sure that the investigation is going to reveal all what transpired, so that we learn from it and try to improve as we go forward. So the need to solicit outside expertise would be guided by the initial outcome of whatever is been discovered in the investigation. But the Gambia Maritime Administration is the regulatory body for the maritime sector, and they are around, and at some point they have to send some inspectors to come and do their own independent investigation. So whatever we gather, it cannot be hidden. It has to be made known to the public. As I am saying, it's a public service. We owe a duty of care to explain to the public and to reassure them that things will improve going forward as we continue providing service. But be rest assured, there's nothing like cover-up in this administration, because everything is transparent. We have written to the guys to provide a written explanation. With that, we'll take the next appropriate steps, and where necessary, to call up an independent review of whatever explanations have been found. And be rest assured, GMA have already sent their personnel, and there's another version to fact-check whatever we are coming out.
Did you brief the president on this incident?
Well, the government authorities have been briefed as along the situation was evolving. Because I myself personally, I was here throughout when the situation was evolving. And those authorities that I report to...
Who are these authorities? Are you talking about the minister?
Well, I report to...
Transport?
Yes, I report to a board of directors and ministry and other stakeholders, important stakeholders. And be rest assured that they have been briefed as the situation was evolving, because it happened at 9:40 p.m. And immediately we got the information. We mobilized to the site, and then information started being filtered, and it was relayed to them. I myself personally did that.
Now, let me ask you this. In fact, the ferry, you stopped ferry services for about a month to embark upon the building of new landing bridges. And these bridges, my understanding is that these landers, a vehicle will need to climb on it, will need to go on it before it could come down. And is that really how this new lander or this landing bridge, is that how they work?
No, it's not supposed to.
You have to have a vehicle running on top of it before it can come down.
It's not supposed to work like that.
Why are you doing that?
Now, because the contract we had with Diamond Shipyards was for the construction, installation and commissioning. But the commissioning bit is what we are deferring, because their role was just to construct, install and commission. But all the other appurtenances and the fixtures were our responsibility. So our local engineers were the ones doing the fabrication. These are metal cases that are on either side of the landing bridge. We call them counterweights. So those are the ones that hold the lander in position once it is heaved up or it is lowered. So there's a problem with the calibration, and that is why the lander cannot be heaved up and maintained, with using the pulleys that were installed. But these are teething problems that we are grappling with. But we are assured by the engineers that as we progress, we will get the necessary balance in terms of the calibration, and then that thing of vehicles having to climb on the lander to sort of assist it in lowering, especially during high tide, would not be existing anymore.
Let me take you a little bit back before we end this interview. If this claim that the captain, if you like, of the boat was the one who deliberately took this boat to where you have these rocks. Did you hear this? Are you aware of that? That where the Kanilai ferry went to, veered off to, wasn't the place that should be the...
No, actually, when the initial reports we have is that they had actually loaded from Bara, left the lander, and were on course to navigate through the turning buoy and head to Banjul. So it's in between the landing bridge and the turning buoy that the engine failure happened. And because of the current and the tide, that's what swayed the ferry to drift to where it ran aground.
Where do you have any final things to say? But before that, before we end the interview, this is the second time in 2 years that your institution is coming under such spotlight. Last year, what happened was this money that was paid to Trust Bank for a police station to be built in Mankamangkunda. I know we've gone past that, but this is the second time that, there is huge public criticism directed at your institution, and you being MD. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's a public service, and criticisms are bound to happen because it's the nature of our job. We owe a duty of care to Gambians in general, and wherever we have been found to be wanting, so to speak, in our administration, we have to be alive to our responsibility to also act in a manner that is diligent and prudent to the public expectation. It's part of the service that we do. That's why we are called public servants. So we are alive to the criticism. And as I said earlier, we will make all conscious efforts to ensure that there's improvement in the service delivery. Because at the end of the day, whatever service we do or work we do has to have a positive impact on people's lives. And these are our own people and people that heavily depend on that trust and responsibility that is bestowed on us. It's not by chance or by luck, but it's a duty of care that we owe Gambians to provide safer and more reliable service, because efficiency in our operations adds to at least lessen the hardship on people, because we're an economic operator. All our actions should transform into gains in the public good, so to speak. So we are alive to our responsibility, and we will not be undaunted. It's a challenge, and once a problem is identified, it no longer becomes a problem. It's a duty now to devise strategies how to address those problems, because they now become challenges which you have to overcome. And as I said, there's no excuse for lack of resources or bad planning, but conscious efforts have to be made to improve the service we deliver, to affect people's lives in a positive manner. That's why we are called public servants.
MD, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
That is the Managing Director of Gambia Ports Authority, Mr. Usman Jobate. Until next time, I am Lamin. Thank you. My guest.